Well, the concept rationalist then holds that there are innate concepts, innate ideas. Leibniz puts it this way: can it be denied that there is much that is innate in our mind, since we are, so to speak, innate to ourselves? And since in ourselves there are, and now here we get a list of things that he takes to be candidates of innate ideas: being, unity, substance, duration, change, activity, perception, pleasure, and 1,000 other objects of our intellectual ideas. Now look carefully at that list. He's saying, I don't learn what being is from experience. I come already equipped, recognizing things that I experience as being, as existing. The same thing is true of unity. I don't have to learn what an object is. My mind comes with that concept already built in. I organize my experience by treating it as experience of objects. So I have an experience, even as a baby maybe, of keys like this. And I recognize that as some kind of object. And then perhaps I look more carefully and realize, well, this is several different objects connected together by this ring. And so in doing that, I am organizing my various sensations of touch, of sight, of sound, and I'm actually thinking then about the various connections between these and thinking, well, this is a thing or a set of things. And so notice what's happening there. I am organizing my experience. I don't learn that this is an object. I don't get the idea of objects from experience, says Leibniz. My mind comes with that concept built in. I automatically organize my experience into experience of objects. The same thing is true of something like pleasure. The baby already understands pleasure and pain. The baby is born. To get it started breathing, it gets a little slap. Well, it right away recognizes pain. It doesn't have to learn to experience what pain is. It knows right away, this is bad. And by the way, there's a judgment there. Not only, I have the concept of this and I don't like it. It's bad. And so you might say there's a judgment built in there that's innate. The baby doesn't have to learn pain hurts. The baby already is built in such a way that it recognizes that pain is not a good thing and it's to be avoided. Now the same thing is true, Leibniz is saying, with duration, with change, with activity, perception, all sorts of things. I close my eyes and I realize I'm not seeing anything. I open them, I am seeing something. And so the idea of perceiving something, of seeing something, well, the empiricist will say, I'm deriving that from the experience of opening and closing my eyes. Leibniz says, I recognize what I'm doing when I open my eyes as fundamentally different from what happens when I close them. Not because I'm learning that through experience, but just because that idea is already built into me. I already have the idea of myself as a sensing, perceiving being. So Leibniz continues, as these objects are immediate objects of our understanding and are always present, though they can't always be consciously perceived because of our distractions and wants, why should it be surprising that we say that these ideas, along with all that depends on them, are innate in us? There's an important distinction philosophically in the background here. We can talk about ideas being in the mind in two different senses. Sometimes they're in the mind occurrently, when I'm thinking about them. Other times they're in the mind dispositionally. So if we think about this for a moment, we can recognize that there are a lot of ideas that I have, and some of them are operating right now. So let me draw a little picture of my mind. Here it is, and I've got thoughts going on in it in rapid succession, so I won't try to draw that in. I can't really animate it. But let's say we're talking about rationalism. We're talking about perception, experience. We're talking about things being innate. And those things are occurrent in my mind. I'm actively thinking about them right now. There are all sorts of concepts I have in my mind that are in what Indian philosophers refer to as the storehouse of my mind that are actually not being mobilized right now. For example, now it's hard to give you an example because the moment I mention it, it's going to be a current. I'm going to be thinking about it. But so right now, I think suddenly, aha, I have the concept of an airplane. I can recognize an airplane. But until that moment, it was not a current in my mind. So when I started speaking, airplane was somewhere here in the background. So it's really part of my mind, but we'll we'll treat it as a warehouse or a storehouse where these concepts are kept for use. They're there in the mind in the sense that I do have these concepts. I can mobilize them. I can use them when I want. But on the other hand, I'm not doing it at a given moment. So all sorts of things are here. The concept of an airplane, the concept of a train, the concept of a house, the concept of various colors, and all this sort of thing is there. I can recognize things as having colors. I can recognize things as houses or as airplanes or as trains, but I may not be doing it at the moment. And as I'm thinking about those things, of course, I've sort of forgotten about innateness and rationalism and perception. Well, I haven't forgotten them. They become dispositionally there. They're available. They're ready to be used, but they're not being used. So you might say, these are the things that are more or less ready to be used, and these are the things that are actually being used. So again, the philosophical term of art for this, these are occurrent in the mind. They're actually occurring. These things are dispositions, or they're in the mind dispositionally. They're ready to be used, but I'm not actually using them right now. At one point, I referred to concepts or ideas in this Enlightenment tradition, what Descartes refers to as the new way of ideas, as first-order cognitive abilities. And I tend to think of them that way. I'm not sure Locke and Descartes and Leibniz did. I'm certain that Berkeley didn't. But in any case, whatever they are, they're something like these dispositions. They're these capacities. And they can be used and become active in the mind, but we can also have them in the mind, in the background, in the storehouse. And that's what Leibniz is talking about. He's talking about having all of these things there in the storehouse ready to be used. So I can recognize something as a pleasure or as a pain. I can recognize something as an object. I can recognize it as continuing, enduring through time. I can recognize when I'm perceiving things and when I'm not. And so in all of those cases, he's saying those concepts are already in the mind. Even the baby already has them ready to go. Now, it may be that some experiences are required to trigger them. And so it might be that let's say, this is a cruel experiment, but let's say at birth we stop up a baby's ears so it can't hear anything. And then later, we take the things out so the baby can hear. That would be a way, highly unethical, you're not going to get that approved by the IRB, but what will happen is, well, either the baby will have lost the ability to hear altogether, which is possible, or it will be that those abilities suddenly get triggered, but it may well be that they were there all along. Now, if we return to what Leibniz is saying, the thought that these various things are there dispositionally should give us more reason to think, yes, there are things innate in us that we don't have to learn, these abilities we have to recognize things even from a very, very young age.